So here's the current situation. I've got these brake lines that I made. Got some leaking on the flare right here. It's just not seating right because I didn't do my flare right perfectly. So I've tightened it down, loosened it up, tightened it down, loosened it up a couple times, but still got that leak. So I'm probably gonna have to cut the end off, redo the flare. Just gotta be able to plug this proportioning valve up there so all my fluid doesn't leak back out and I don't want to have to re-bleed the master cylinder, which is a pain in the ass. So maybe we can get this fixed up. I'm going to try to pull this line and see if I can remake this flare and get this stop leaking. So first things first, I'm going to try to pull this clamp right here. I should use a longer socket, but this thing off and try to disconnect from the proportioning valve and pull this. Stay right there. Alright. Make sure I got my paint covered because brake fluid likes to eat paint real quick. So now, see if I can get this top line off without making a huge mess. How I'm going to block this line off is a whole other situation. Hopefully it doesn't leak too bad. So let's see. It starts leaking out. I really should buy stock in shop towels. Go through them like crazy. Well, maybe that'll be alright. So far, so good. Alright, let me try to pull the rest of this line. And we'll see how my fluid leak. Let's pull this connection down here. Alright, try to get a grip on this. So the line doesn't spin and snap. Suck. Wrong end, dude. Oh yeah, brake fluid dripping on my arm. That feels great. See what I got going on here. The nice thing about this Nikop is it bends so easy. You just hand bend it. I like the stainless line. Well, it's a little thin on that one side, so I'm trying to clip this, redo the flare so we can get to see better and not be covered in brake fluid. Be great. Alright, so I got my old flare cut off. I'm going to try to... So you end up with this little burrs inside here when you do use the tubing cutter. So what you need to do is take some kind of tool. They have a reamer tool. I don't have one, so I just use a 7/64 drill bit. Try to do it upside down so the shavings don't fall in my line. Because, metal shaving and brake line don't really work together. So that kind of opens that up. Alright, that's better. So then what I'm going to do is take the back side of this clamp for this flaring tool. I'm going to fit this up in fight with the brake line. You kind of just want to fit it so it's level, almost level with the top of that. And then you don't have to crank it down real tight. Basically, I'm just going to use a file to flatten it out and get a good angle. Because the flatter and more even you can get this end, the better off you're going to be when you try to seat this connection. That's pretty easy. And then also, just kind of go around the edge a little bit because it gets a burr on the edge. Knock that down a little bit. Alright, so then you want to take your tool here, put the line up in there. That's way high. So what you're trying to get is you got this die that goes with it, and what you want to do is get your tube the same as the height of this die. Not the tip part, just the bottom area. And your tube, that's what's going to form the first part of the flare when you press this down. Alright, so you can only get just even with the die. And then I'm going to crank this down. And you got to be careful with this thing because both sides aren't level, or get as even as you can. And you really want to crank this thing down because once you start cranking down on this, it's with the die, it's going to try to push the tube out the bottom of this clamp. Alright, that's pretty tight. Then I'm going to add just a drop of brake fluid on here. Oh, a couple drops. And then your die's going to sit. It's got this little tip on it that fits down in the tube. I'm going to seat that in there. And you're going to take your tool, clamp here, and flip that over. And there's a little indentation on this die where you This fits into there. Now you're going to try to get it as flat and even as you possibly can, because you want this thing to sit level. So you may have to like adjust it around, shift it. You got a little bit of leeway to work with here to make it work. So, alright, once you get that set in there, you're just going to crank this down so it's flush. It's already kind of bending on me, so this might. Once you get that in there, I'll try to get off. I don't really have a bench vise to clamp this. You normally clamp this end into a vise, and it makes it probably a lot easier. But work with what you got, I guess. Alright, so that forms your little fitting, and it's kind of it's offset a little bit. Like I said, it's really hard to get that thing centered. Unless you got it sitting perfectly flush, or the end, the tube's got to be perfectly straight. So what you're going to do is, at this end, without the die, and this is going to form the other part of your flare. But let's try to get it as even as you can, and it's just don't crank it all the way down like I've been doing. Just give it a little, maybe a half turn, 3/4 turn, and that'll form the inside of your flare. And hopefully it'll fit and not leak. Alright, that one seems pretty good. Usually get these burrs here on the end inside the flare, so I'll normally take a little file and just kind of smooth that down so this can sit tight. Because it won't, with these little burrs here, it kind of has a gap. So what I'll do is take a small file here and try to get these in. Because you really want this fitting to sit like flush up against so it sits like tight in there. Otherwise you're just gonna, I'll end up with a leak again. So, you do it 500-600 times, you'll get it. Alright, so smooth that out a little bit. Try to take the burr off of there and see how it fits. And looks like it's flush, so hopefully this thing will seal tight when I put this back on there. Got 3 inch bead on it, it doesn't, it sits pretty flat, so we'll see on part 2.